Hello, Forever family, and welcome to today's Product Power Hour. I'm Holly Stout, Vice President of Global Product Development here at Forever Living Products, and it's my privilege and my honor to get to work with a team of talented scientists, doctors, and chemists from around the world to formulate and work on the products that we eventually launch and bring to the Forever world. I'm joined today by our esteemed scientist, Dr. Peter Pressman, who is a member of our Scientific Advisory Board, and today our topic is vitamins uncapped. We're going to take a deep dive inside some of those daily necessities, and we're going to talk about the science, we're going to talk about format, and Dr. Pressman is going to bring that amazing scientific evidence as well as speak with that authority. He's been a scientist and a doctor for Dr. Pressman. I won't tell your age, but I know that you've been in the industry for a very, very long time, and he works with our talented scientists from around the world as well. So welcome, Dr. Pressman. It's always an honor to have you on our Product Power Hour.
Thank you so much, Holly. It's a pleasure to be here. A real privilege.
Dr. Pressman, if you recall, I sent you some of the Forever Living formulas or recipes, if you will, for some of our daily essential nutrients. That would include our Forever Daily, our Forever Nature Min, Forever Immune Gummy, Forever Calcium, and our Vitalize for Men and Vitalize for Women. And Dr. Pressman had the opportunity of looking at these recipes. He gets to see 1 to 100% of every nutrient and every ingredient in these formulas. And we designed a series of questions for him so that he can speak to the integrity and the science in these supplements, as well as dose and format. And we're even going to talk about when to take these supplements. So let's go ahead and dive right in, Peter. I am going to ask you the very first question. When we're looking at daily nutrition, does the format of the vitamin or mineral, meaning the form, does that really matter when it comes to absorption or function or results?
The answer is yes, no question about it. But let me pull back for just a second.
Great.
And so we're all on the same page on the basics. Let's talk about nutrition and vitamins, nutritional supplements as a subset of good nutrition and smart living. So nutrition in the broadest sense, I would say is one of the strongest and most agile, most adjustable factors that can be used to support and promote health, and to reduce the burden of disease during an individual's entire life. Nutrition is slow and steady. We're not talking about drugs here, which are fast and dramatic. We're talking about something that builds foundation, that builds resilience, and that builds a robust kind of resistance to illness of all kinds, both the communicable, the contagious, and the non-communicable. And I would say further that we need to make a distinction when we talk about vitamins. And let me preface this by saying this is a very dynamic area for research and development at this point. But we need to make a distinction between nutrient inadequacies and nutrient deficiencies. This is really a big deal. And I'll get to your question, I promise.
Oh, no, this is a perfect setup. I appreciate this, where you're talking about healthy nutrition. I love that you said smart living, healthy living, right? We're talking about complementing good diet, a balanced lifestyle. And I love that you're pulling back a little bit and really exploring what that means before we dive into what we're doing about it. So go ahead and proceed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You framed that beautifully. And I think that when we talk about micronutrient or vitamin, mineral, electrolyte inadequacies, we're talking about the intake of nutrients in lesser quantity than the estimated average requirement. These are the kinds of problems we see in the United States. We see this in the developed world. We're not talking about situations in which we're looking at abject poverty or areas where there is great hostility. we're talking about right now inadequacies. These occur when the intake of a nutrient is above the deficiency level, but below the recommended dietary intake. So unlike deficiencies, which lead to clinically evident symptoms, florid malnutrition, we're talking about hidden symptoms that affect the way our physiology adapts to the stresses and strains of modern life. I'll give you an example here. We talk about WHO, for example. The World Health Organization estimates that somewhere between 70 and 80 million children around the world suffer from the inadequacy of vitamin A. In other words, in medicine, the lingo is subclinical deficiency. So subclinical deficiency means that there are no apparent clinical symptoms, but what happens is that children who suffer that kind of inadequacy have higher infection susceptibility, have reduced physical growth. And so we're not talking about in the realm of deficiency, that vitamin A deficiency might manifest itself as frank blindness. That's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about the treatment of serious disease. Malnutrition, significant malnutrition, is a serious disease state. And it's a complex disease state. We're talking about being able to live in the fast-paced world that we function in typically, where we're not eating regularly or properly, where we may be suffering from micronutrient deficiencies and our resistance to both infectious illness, viruses, and our resistance to things like metabolic syndrome, hyperglycemia, and even frank diabetes. These things are real issues that we see with inadequacies. So nutrient inadequacies is what we're trying to compensate for here.
So would it be fair then, Dr. Pressman, to maybe say that nutrient deficiencies are kind of into that category where you could go into drug necessity, and inadequacies are really where you had the supplement or the complement to that healthy lifestyle, where maybe you are eating generally well, but you still, just because of the food source or the way we're growing our food, you might not be able to get an adequate amount of those micronutrients we're talking about. So it'd be fair to say that the inadequacies are where supplementation comes into play, and when you go into those extreme deficiencies, that's where drugs come into play. Is that a fair statement?
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. You're ready for your residency.
Great. I love it. Well, then let's talk then. We have here at Forever Living Products, as you know, we're a health and wellness company, and we're founded on principles of integrity, high quality, scientifically supported formulations. And when we look at creating dietary supplements to meet a global population, that's a daunting task, where we're providing a multivitamin designed for really any and everybody who may have what you mentioned, an inadequacy in some of those micronutrients. So when you look at some of the formulas at Forever Living Products, and we look at how we use scientific evidence to formulate, when we choose certain forms of vitamins or certain forms of minerals, does that matter? Does it make the body more readily available to use those? Does it really matter?
It does matter. We're talking about here how you complex the bioactive element, the particular vitamin with another compound such as a salt, or you phosphorylate it, or you do various things to optimize the bioavailability, as we call it, of that vitamin, so that it is absorbed in the way it must be absorbed. rather than sloughed off as waste. The other piece of this that I want to mention here before it sort of slides by the wayside is the rationale for what I really love about what Forever has designed in the supplements, the rationale for targeted supplements. And I'm thinking in particular of the Vitalize for women and the Vitalize for men. Nutritional requirements change during the course of life. They change by gender. Gender requires certain supports for optimal functioning. The life course dictates particular requirements. During fetal development, infancy, and childhood, when growth is at a maximum, development is accelerated. Micronutrient intake is much higher with respect to body size than you see in older individuals. In adolescents and healthy young adults, where you see a great deal of activity, exercise levels are usually very high, we see the loss of water-soluble vitamins that need to be replaced. We really need to think about the fastest growing segment of our population in older individuals, where the requirement of certain nutrients like vitamin D increases, while other nutrient requirements considerably decrease, particularly according to gender. Males do not require iron typically. In fact, iron supplementation can be quite dangerous and accumulate in tissues where it actually constitutes the precursor of pathology rather than help you. So your supplements here, the targeted supplements, reflect the varying needs across the life course. And that's incredibly important.
So let's talk about that more specifically, Dr. Pressman. Let's talk about women in general. And let's identify a couple of those key elements in general. Let's talk about standardized supplementation. Let's talk about women. What might be something that a woman could benefit from in a targeted supplement?
Well, one of the most important things, obviously, is the vulnerability to infection in the genitourinary tract. Urinary tract infections happen with great frequency. This is one of the most common things one of the most common problems we see in primary care medicine. And I was particularly happy to see that Forever has placed a cranberry extract in the Vitalize for women. Cranberry extract contains compounds called proanthocyanidins. The big name, which actually describes a set of compounds that actually reduce the likelihood that bacteria will attach to the inside surfaces of the plumbing. In other words, when coliform bacteria, for example, E. coli, attach to the walls of the urethra, the uroepithelial cells, they do so with these very fine hairs called fimbriae. And it is the anthocyanidins that actually block a great deal of that process. So they reduce the likelihood that bacteria will attach and infect the tissue.
Which would lead in a urinary tract infection, right? That's what we're talking. We're talking about E. coli, which could just be one of those harmful bacteria in, like you mentioned, a female's plumbing that would create a urinary tract infection.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. This is a normal process where bacteria find their way into the urethra and ascend and attach. And when they form attachments, that sets the stage for infection. If you block that attachment, then the simple urinary flow will wash those bacteria out and reduce the likelihood of infection. So we're not treating infection here.
Yeah.
We're not saying this is a drug. This is a micronutrient which actually mitigates the likelihood of infection. So you're supporting health, and that's incredibly important for women.
And that comes from a cranberry extract, right? We know from a scientific standpoint that the cranberry extract is notorious for being able to provide a support to a female in a targeted supplement.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. We have decades of clinical experience, and this is interesting because we're beginning to come full circle in recognizing that that a lot of the botanicals and a lot of the naturally occurring substances that traditional medicine has used for literally hundreds and even thousands of years are now being essentially rediscovered by modern Western medicine. And what happens then is a lovely marriage of Western science and technology to optimize the way we extract and process these compounds, these botanicals, and these phytopharmacologic substances, and then adjust them for optimal supplementation when our natural diet might simply not allow us to get enough. So that brings me to another question, which is I think one which we discussed previously, which has to do with dose.
Yes,
let's talk about dose. Response is absolutely critical, and this is another area where I've been impressed by the compounding and the design of the supplements that you guys have put forth here. Very often we see supplements that are wildly in excess of the recommended daily requirements, and those recommended daily requirements are developed scientifically and are based on many years of replicated studies in many populations at all stages in the life course, and we can take that as at least some kind of a gold standard. Now, if you exceed the recommended daily requirements, as we've said, you're into the drug realm or into the toxic realm. Now, what you guys have done, for example, in your dosing for the targeted male and female vitalized products is say 2 tablets twice daily. So why do we do that? Why is that important? Well, it's for 2 reasons. One, by taking sort of a pulse dose twice daily, you are effectively sustaining a therapeutic level in the blood. In other words, you're not taking a single huge dose, which may exceed a therapeutic level, or you may be taking a dose that oversaturates the transporter. Let's talk a little bit about saturable transporters. Another fancy term, but one which is incredibly important and crucial for the design of a proper supplement. There are transporter systems within the wall of the gut, within the mucosal lining of the intestine, which grab various micronutrients selectively and transport those nutrients into the bloodstream. Now, if you provide a huge dose of a compound, you're going to supersaturate the capacity. You're going to overwhelm that transporter. So what's going to happen is it's not going to work efficiently. and only a small quantity of that substance is going to be absorbed.
So the body is smart, right? The body knows how much it can take, how much it can leverage, where to use those types of micronutrients. And when you overwhelm that transportation system, it's going to discard that. It's certainly very smart where it's going to say, okay, thank you, I can use this much, but you've given me way too much. So it's going to discard what it doesn't need and then transport those small elements to exactly where the body needs it.
Exactly. Again, you've framed it beautifully. The body is smart. It knows what it needs, and it will absorb just what it needs. So if you give it too much, it'll either muck up the system, it'll clutter it, it'll make it inefficient, or it will simply result in you sloughing off or eliminating that excess nutrient, either in stool or in urine. And that doesn't help anybody. So saturable transporters is very, very important concept here.
So Dr. Pressman, if we're looking at a supplement, and you touched on this a little earlier, so we've really touched on three very, very important topics that I really want to dive into. And the first was the dose. So if I'm looking at a supplement, should I look to see that it has 100% of every one of those micronutrients in the RDAs, or is it okay that there is something in a 20% or a 30% ratio? Tell me, am I looking for 100% straight across the board?
No, not at all. 100% is not necessarily what you need or want.
Right.
You know, we're in an age now where we are beginning to move into something called precision medicine or personalized medicine. And what precision and personalized means in terms of how we support our health is that various people, let me put it this way, there are, at various points in the life cycle, and for various individuals that we can generalize about, you can very easily overwhelm what's necessary and again, end up in a toxic kind of a situation. Vitamin D, for example, you have a lot of vitamin D in the male vitalize, less vitamin D in the female vitalize. Why? Because in women, particularly in reproductive age women, you have vitamin D receptors in huge numbers and great density in the ovaries and the endometrium, and so you don't need to provide excessive amounts there. Whereas with males, we have much lesser a lesser density of these receptors, so you've got to provide more in order to find the optimal saturation. So these are important in terms of nutrient absorption, and that's again very, very critical. The other thing that's critical is that we shouldn't talk about single vitamins as replacements here. What we want is a synergy between a number of micronutrients that work together, that work in concert, and so we call this an entourage effect. Or a synergistic effect. And when you combine balanced support, and Vitalize uses that term and makes good on it, because you're combining all these various elements, botanicals paired with vitamins, paired with minerals, in quantities that are complementary. When we talk about low doses, and you talked about 100%, well, why is 100% maybe not so good? The answer is that we can easily overdose on vitamins. In fact, there are a whole set of diagnoses that are termed hypervitaminosis diagnoses. And what we want to do is avoid that at all costs. There's a truism in biological systems that we've known for some time and that people are rediscovering yet again in the research literature. and that is hormesis. Hormesis talks about what a dose-response relationship that is conserved across virtually every living thing. And that means that usually small doses, and in this case of micronutrients, of vitamins, and of minerals, electrolytes, small doses produce a stimulatory effect, which is desirable. High doses produce typically an opposite effect, an inhibitory effect, which is typically quite negative and undesirable.
Right.
So what you want to do is not provide 100% or 180% or even 1,000%. You don't want to do that because you're going to have the result be pathology. If you take too much vitamin C, and I'm very impressed that the amounts that are very low in Forever supplements, if you take too much vitamin C, that can be precipitated out and turn into a kidney stone, an ascorbate or an ascorbic acid salt kidney stone. So
interesting.
What we want to do is respect the power of micronutrients, taking advantage of the support, and that's critical.
That's, Dr. Pressman, that's one thing I really want to drive home with our consumers and anybody who may not be a part of the Forever family watching this podcast here. I really want them to understand that when we do these scientific formulations and we recommend 2 tablets, one in the morning and the night, or just 2 tablets twice, 2 times daily, that is a very strategic way to introduce these micronutrients into the body. We live in this society, I know especially in the United States, if a little is good, well then surely a lot is better, and then too much will overwhelm the body. And people feel that vitamins are just, that there's something that you can